kind of, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who put this together. I know, hey, I'm seeing people say hello, so it looks like there are folks that are really excited to be here, and we're happy to have you all. Wanted to do a quick thank you to MOBItalks for putting this together as well, and also for you being here. This is just, I'm really excited. I loved the video. I just love folks who are so creative. Creativity speaks value we're trying to do over at Mobi, and so we're just really, really. So quickly, I know we have things to get into today, but I really wanted to kind of just start off by saying, like, ultimately, what inspired you to do, to tell the story the way that you did?
Yeah, so originally, I think earlier in the year about the MOBItalks going digital when they're normally live events, and kind of like pushing conversation really wanted because to maintain like the experience that we have when we have live events. Tons of community. There's versus versus the TED you just watch on YouTube and one person on the screen or two people and then it's over. Creative in the way that my mind and my attention span is quite low. So I'm like, what would like keep me intrigued in watching something that is a video version of something that's normally like a live, really dynamic event? So I was really thinking, okay, so like, what if this is a documentary that features like the whole community still in some way? And so really the main thing was trying to make sure like everyone who couldn't come in to sit into the room was on the screen, that was, I would say that's the main thing.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think the other thing that what I love about the kind of this whole concept too is that you get control. So like, I think you get to control kind of the story and the narrative, and you don't really have to deal with or worry with the pushback that sometimes you can get when you're doing it in any other way, right? So there's still this element of control. And so I think one of the questions that was posed, and we really wanted to kind of lead this conversation with, is thinking about like liberation, thinking about sexual liberation, thinking about what it means to be able to kind of, when you talk about controlling like the rhetoric, right? The rhetoric sometimes that happens around these conversations, specifically with Black and brown or Black and queer bodies, right? What does it mean for you to be liberated, and how did you think about that as you were putting together the work that you did?
Yeah, so that definitely is one of the like the main points that I was trying to get across with this episode. So I'm glad you brought that up. Sexual liberation to me means something so different than it means to like a lot of other people. Because for sexual liberation to me means I can like wear skimpy clothes or like post a picture of my ass on the internet and still be like seen as a human and valued and offer myself value and that whole kind of energy. And I know that sexual liberation for other people means being able to freely do sex work and get paid for it and make a living for it. Or it means just doing what you want to do with your body, like what you want to do with it without kind of having to succumb to like whatever other people think that you're supposed to do with your body and your sexuality and like how you're supposed to talk or who you're supposed to have sex with or not have sex with. And I think to be liberated is very much a process. And when I was talking to Max Connor and to D'Angelo Jackson, I was kind of questioning and I was wondering at what did you feel like, okay, I'm just gonna do this, like this is what I'm interested in, this is like how I want to move with my body, and this is what I want to do with it. And yeah, I hope that answers the question. I'm rambling.
No, yeah, I think I think this is a very interesting thing. When we start talking about like liberation, recently I felt like people have really started to kind of like lean into this. I would say years ago, this whole idea, right time that OnlyFans, and then right around the time that we started seeing folks kind of promoting on OnlyFans, it was so much, I would say, shame that attaching to that concept of like work per
Yeah.
se. I think it's not only cool, but I also think it's revolutionary that there are a lot of Black trans and trans individuals who are um, saying it's my I get to do what one thing and I want to do it in a way where I feel like I have control over it, but also too, talking about safety. And so I think that it's important to kind of throw that concept back, considering that there have been a lot of conversations around folks getting hurt or, going on the apps per se
Yeah.
and not being safe per se. What are your thoughts on safety around, we talk about liberation, talk about kind of the ownership of our body, but what does that also mean in the context of safety?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I don't know if my answer is going to be, I think for me, if I can like start here, safety is still something that I'm like exploring and trying to figure out because in the past I haven't like always like felt safe like walking down the streets wearing like too
Mm-hmm.
short shorts, even just like mentally safe because it's like the verbal abuse that you get from people who aren't like actually trying to touch you is
Real.
it's really hard to like reverse and ignore and avoid. And even like I very much like don't take the train sometimes for certain reasons because I just because of like the way I dress or like if I have makeup on or something or like
Mm-hmm.
my stomach's out or whatever the things are. um and I think it takes a level of confidence and a level of self-awareness and a level of awareness of like what's going around, like
Mm-hmm.
going on around you, just to be able to like step out into the world or to be around people who are not going to have like the same idea of like sexual freedom or like okayness with what you are doing or again how you want to move or what you want to do with your body. And even meeting up with people like on apps or having sex with anyone or hanging out with
Mm-hmm.
anyone in a close proximity.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, it like can be dangerous physically, mentally, emotionally, in all these different ways. So I don't know. I kind of would pose that question to a lot. What does safety look like
Mm-hmm.
in your sexual liberation? Just like what does it look like? Because I don't know, people are unpredictable, and I think one for me, safety looks like me making my house a home and being able to feel safe in here because nobody's like allowed in here unless I invite them,
Right.
which is just quite rare. It means like having a really good support system with people that you trust. So like when you go out, like travel together or you're dancing with them or those kind of things. And it really is. And I think being like queer and being like feminine and just like a whole bunch of things really does like kind of set you up to like with this like idea of fear and like
Mm-hmm.
what could happen,
Yeah. 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 So I think you bring up a really good point, and I love that you've mentioned the word feminine quite a few times. And I find myself that as I've gotten older, I know for me when I was in college, there was this whole concept of like no queens that was kind of like that was thrown around, right? I don't want to date a queen. I'm not interested in queens. And
Yeah.
I think for me now, as I've gotten older and as I've kind of come into my brand and I've and recognizing that many of the people that have laid the pathway or have laid for us to are as people were affected or they
Yeah.
identified as non-binary or identified themselves as trans. So before I get to another part of the question that I want to ask you or what I want to get into about this idea of like what does power look like for you, and one, being able to own your story, being able to tell your story the way that you want to tell it, and this idea that a big part of the story that you are telling is this reclaiming the identity of femininity and how we show up as people. So what has that looked like for you, and how have you been able to kind of own that power in your journey?
Yeah, so I think back to like when I was like in high school when I lived with my dad and even like freshman year
Mm,
of college, and I would say now that um a really a really significant way that I make sure I do have like some power. Yes, this is my tequila and lemonade,
I
honey.
saw that. That's what made me smile.
um
Mhm.
is being able to say no to things that I don't want to do and in places I don't want to be and clothes I don't want to wear, and being able to give myself and say yes to myself and say yes to the things that I do and am interested in. And that's
Mhm.
kind of like how I like reclaim power in I try to very much like avoid, and not even avoid, but I guess I would even say I would actually acknowledge, like, okay, someone else says no to this, but like I want to say yes, and so like this is yes for me, and that feels powerful, and that and going back to safety, it feels safe to like be able to give myself things that I want and be places where that I be places where I want to be. So just so thinking about power is just really like just like saying yes, just doing what you want to do, and knowing that that is like okay, and that you made that decision, and it because I think in the past, like growing up, it's like, okay, I'm not gonna wear this because someone else doesn't want me to wear it, or I'm not gonna go to this party because someone else doesn't want me, or I am gonna go to this party because someone wants me to go when I don't actually want to go, and so all of those things feel powerful, even when it comes to dress, when it comes to sex, when it comes to dating, when it comes to going out, when it comes to what I want to do for work or what I don't want to do for work, which projects, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So I love this point, the power of yes. I think that's a big part of what this work that you are doing,
Yeah.
and why it's so important for us to see it, right? Is this power of yes. Did you want to talk to that a little bit about like what does the power of yes mean for you?
The power of yes for me, like on a large scale, means like liberation, and it means no one, like just nobody is the boss of me. And it means I get to tell my story how like it should be told.
Right.
Because I guess what I would say is the power of yes like lets me tell stories how I want to tell them, and it lets me live my life how I want to tell them, and my life feels so much more honest when I can like give myself these things, and offer myself like a life that I feel deserving of, I guess,
I love that. I'm like, yes, like I literally like you're giving your points, but I'm like, I'm literally in my mind snapping because I think that there's just something so powerful, and even just us being in this space, right? We've been together for like 12 minutes already, and I'm already feeling like this kinship of like people who have been told throughout society and life that they don't matter, or that they shouldn't be seen, or that they shouldn't be able to be authentic in who they are. And I think just even looking at you and me not really knowing you, there's still this element of like how powerful it is for me to know that you exist, and for me to know that you are leaving a trail of art, you're leaving a trail of storytelling, you're leaving a voice behind in the work that you're doing for folks who often are told that their voices in their lives don't matter. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you. Like, I know we're not ending, but I genuinely wanted to just say in this moment, thank you so much. And I'm so honored to be in this space with you, because again, not there.
You.
Yeah, there's not a lot of us and a lot of our stories being told from an authentic place.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna shift the conversation a little bit, because I do recognize we still have to have conversation, but folks we also need to answer questions.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that I'm cognitive of that. The question that I do have for you, before we go into some questions from the folks that are watching, I want to know, how have you, as you've learned to love yourself, how have you learned to like define what love looks like for you in relation to that?
So, and this is even this can kind of answer one of the questions that was like in the film that we did with him podcast is what did your parents teach you about love? And I would say ultimately my parents taught me how to love initially, and I didn't, until I'm, this age, in this place in my life, I didn't completely know what that even meant, what that question would even mean or whatever. But like now that I'm like older and like I'm more aware of like myself and aware of like my parents, I really am thinking about the way that I love myself and the way that I love other people, and what my love languages are, and how those are very much identical to like what my parents' way of loving is, even the way that they love me when they didn't know I was gay, or when they didn't want me to be gay, or it felt like they didn't want me to be. Just like kind of, I don't know, transferring that into like what it looks like to love myself and love people and love like a community, and like my family and like with my brothers, like the way that I love my dad is, or the way that my dad loves me is like, or rather how he shows love to me is really similar to the way I show love to like my friends, my best friends, and my partners, and people I'm like romantically interested in. And I think that is really interesting and like really powerful. And yeah.
Mhm.
If I didn't answer that
Yeah.
specifically, please ask
No,
again.
and yeah, so yes and I mean yes and no, because the next question I was going to go on to was talking about love languages. I think, I'm currently in the process right now of writing an article where I'm talking about how queer people need to stop taking I would say advice from straight people about what love is supposed to look like
Yeah.
because of our love, because of the way that love looks for us is not necessarily complicated, but I think that there's several levels and there's so many layers that I think that folks who are cis don't really get or understand.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I think in asking that question about how you've learned your own love language, what would be your advice or what would be your from your film and from the way that we're talking about love and this notion, how have you learned the true value or the true understanding of love in a way that looks the way you feel and recognizes you as a whole individual, if that makes sense?
Okay. Gonna do my best.
Okay.
I think what I've learned, especially since I moved to New York, I've been actually this month makes four years that I've lived in New York. And it's been vastly different from like my experience in Ohio. And in Ohio, like I had just came out as gay, and I just didn't know anyone. Like I didn't know very many people who were like openly gay, or who like loved themselves, or that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
when I moved to New York, and like I this took time and patience and energy, but I did like find a community, and I did find people to love and who could love me, and kind of seeing like what that looked like in a space where other queer people are, where other Black and brown, queer, gay, trans people are. It was really, really moving, and it really made me kind of understand the value of patience as well, and like what it really takes to understand someone, because we're all so fucking different.
Very.
And like we're interested in so many different things as far as dress, politics, places where we want to eat, places where we want to go out, like the kind of relationships we want to be in. And I think that these things are all valuable and valid. And it took me like some patience and a lot of unlearning from like what I knew from being in Ohio my whole life, to get to a point where I'm like, okay, like there's like all these like cross identities, in ways that other people feel liberated and valuable and loved, and things like that exist out here, and it exists in the whole world, but I just didn't get that interaction in Ohio. And so being here and just being patient and understanding, and asking questions and doing all these interviews, and being able to decide if people are for me or if I'm for them, or and being able to say no when we decide, like, okay, actually I don't really like you, but your experience is valid, or I do like you, and I want to work really hard to understand you and to keep you in my life, even though some of our values and interests are very different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think you're touching on something that it was on the list, but it's not. I think there is, specifically with the way that media is going now and the way that shows like Pose and the way that even the way that I feel like, and I've had this conversation before, drag and things of that nature is becoming so convoluted. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on how have you been able to own and retain your story and not let society or not even let the industry as a whole kind of take that over. Because I think what's happening, and I guess you're probably wondering, like, where's Dr. John Paul going with this? I'm noticing a trend where things are starting to become very watered down in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
and things specifically, and I'm not saying poses and I'm not saying that Drag Race has, but I'm thinking there have been a lot of individuals, straight individuals per se, who have started to see themselves as a part of the community when they really don't understand the struggle fully, right? So how have you been able to really say, like, this story is mine to keep and I'm not going to, basically, I guess I'm asking, like, how have you been able to really truly own your fullness in the ways that you tell your story?
Yeah. And just to start it here, but I won't end here.
Mm-hmm.
Even going back to like saying no to things
Mm-hmm.
that to things and places where I don't feel safe or comfortable. And I'll like offer an example. Just when I used to like work for straight white people, and they kind of wanted me to do this or that, or kind of fetishize me, even even like in workplaces, and also take advantage of me, and just being able to say no to those kind of things early in my time being in New York, and then kind of growing into myself and taking ownership of like what I want to do in my life, what I want my house to look like, where I want to work, has just like been, I don't know, really important in me understanding like, okay, this is really like my life, and I can really steer it how I want to steer it. But if I say no to things, and not to make that like a theme, and I know I have like the necklace on, that was an accident, but
I was looking at that.
but honestly, being able to just like figure out like where I want to be, and who I want to allow to take my, even like who I let take my picture, or who like I let pay me to do things, or who I like let hire me to, I'll say no to jobs that I'm that's not interested in, or don't feel safe, or I don't really, the money is not worth like whatever the project is. That is like such a huge way that's given me like the confidence and the power to be able to tell my own story, and be my own person, and again do like all the things, and live like a life that I feel is the one that I want, you know.
So I want to encourage people real quick. We're coming up to a place where we're being asked to do Q&A. So if you can start putting your questions into the box, so that way I can start asking them, that would be fantastic. But there's two more thoughts that I have that I wanted to ask you before we start asking questions from the folks watching. We oftentimes notice that in a lot of like queer films, shows, anything related to the LGBTQ, Black LGBTQ experience, there's a lot of pain that's associated with it. I guess the one thing for me that I always love to ask folks is, what has reclaiming your joy truly looked like, and how have you been able to make sure that you hold it? Because I think you kind of talked to it with this idea of like saying no, but I still think that there's so much power in having discussions around us as queer Black individuals, or queer Black and brown individuals, retaining our joy. So what has retaining joy look like for you, or reclaiming joy look like for you?
Yeah. What has one more time for me?
What has reclaiming or retaining joy looked like for you?
Yeah, I think this is like a process to truly understand like what you genuinely like to do, and like what actually brings you joy. And I think that for me, that there's such a wide net of things that bring me joy and things that do not bring me joy. And it's been such a process, because things that I thought made me happy or made me feel joy don't actually. I think one thing, and again, I'm sorry, struggling with answers sometimes, but I think one thing that I have always thought that has brought me joy, and I sometimes still do think, is making other people happy, like period. And like that is a thing, and that is valid, but in doing that, sometimes I'm not actually like happy after it, because it's not a complete service to myself, which is okay, because everything isn't. But for a long time, like what people would be like, what makes you happy? And I'm like, making other people happy. And I'm like, well, actually I like to dance too. And like I actually like staying home by myself and not giving people all my time sometimes, you know what I mean? And so really like taking time to understand yourself and look at yourself in the mirror, and look at like, what do you like actually enjoy, and like what gives you joy, and after identifying those things, protecting them, and holding yourself accountable to doing and participating in those things for yourself. Because there are a lot of people who indirectly will try to like take your joy away, and you can do that because you're saying yes to the thing that you don't want to do, or being like in a space where you don't like actually want to be. So like retaining my joy really means just like and I'm not perfect at this, because I'm still quite a people pleaser, and I'm very much working on this, but retaining my joy really is like holding myself accountable to doing the things that make me feel joy, and putting in hard fucking work to continue to do the things that bring me joy, because working for myself and creating images of Black queer people is something that I like absolutely brings me joy, and I don't want to stop doing it. And it's hard because like I have to pay my rent doing this as well. And so what does it look like to pay my rent and feed myself and do this work and continue to be able to do this work and fund it? And it's my job, because this is something that brings me joy, to bust my ass to do it. And like with relationships and with leaving the house dressing like a fairy, like even if those things are scary, or even if those things are hard, I really like hold myself accountable to doing the thing, and trying to understand people and trying to understand myself and just continuing to do that shit, even when it's scary and even when it's hard, even when it's expensive, even when it feels like impossible or it's stressful, like just busting ass to give yourself a life that you want.
Okay. And so I heard a whole bunch of themes that you mentioned when you were talking, that kind of tie back to, how you've explored the different themes throughout your film. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to ask you kind of as like, not necessarily the last question, but one of the questions that I personally have put together or I have for you.
Yeah.
What are some of the themes that are explored within your film? And what's the importance of having them portrayed throughout your film? So specifically thinking as you put together your thoughts of how you were going to make this or how you were going to do this project, how much of it was your own thoughts and how much of it was a response to some of the things that you've experienced in your own life?
Yeah, so one of the most difficult things about putting this film together, and one of the things that was the most like time consuming and kind of stressful, was trying to make
Mm-hmm.
sure like, and it's obviously not a completely linear story, and that's not what I wanted to create. But I wanted to tell a story that like did like have some themes, and that's kind of where the title came from. It's called Stepping into Control, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
quote from Max Connor. And when I was going through all the footage, and I'm like, okay, so why is this clip in here? And does it make sense that this clip and this clip are in here? Or does it look like I just threw a bunch of random shit in here? Because I didn't want that. But then like the stepping into control thing and taking control of your life. And I think a lot of the themes that I'm not going to repeat of this conversation are just very much in this film. And so like we have sex there as like an umbrella theme, but I wanted love to be in there, and like what happens before sex, or what happens after sex, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to talk about like the work aspect and the pleasurable aspect, but also like the pain of some sex. We had Ramon Johnson speaking about being queer, black, and fat, and how people kind of take advantage of that and tell him he is not allowed to kind of like ask for what he wants
Mm-hmm.
in regards to pleasure. Um, and we talked about sexual liberation and just like a lot of things that I felt like were people taking control of their own lives and their own journeys and their own stories and being able to tell them.
Yeah.
And again, like Ramon is even saying like and maybe in a bit that I might have cut, but Ramon is saying like I'm not talking to no niggas right now because I haven't found anyone who's gonna respect me. And you can talk to people, and you can talk to plenty of people in dating and let them talk to you however you want to, but however they want to, and just like eat that. But I think it takes courage and energy to be able to hold yourself accountable to not putting yourself in spaces where niggas are talking to you like you ain't shit, or like you can't
Mm-hmm.
ask for head, or like you can't cuddle because you look like this, or because they have the power, or whatever those things are. And it's like, nah, I'm sexy, and I'm yes, I'm fat, but like I'm worthy of all these things, and like this is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And so to go back to themes, like I just wanted like this all to be represented, because I don't identify with every single thing in there, and I wanted this to turn into like a fluid thing. And yes, I did. And with my team, we came up with questions, and we picked out like different talent to be a part of the film. But it really
Mm-hmm.
did come together. The story like kind of fluid. It happened like how it needed to happen. And like whenever I like saw someone, I'm like, he has a story to tell, she has a story to tell, they have a story to tell. Okay, how can I fit that into here without it seeming
Mm-hmm.
like a hot mess, I guess? Because there are so many stories, and like this very much is my story, but it's also very much like not, like
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
haven't lived a lot of these experiences, and I don't know what it's like or what it would be like further than some of the conversations, or further than some of the thinking that I could have about it. And I want and I said this to Glad, but I want this piece to be like a celebration of queer life, and I want us to celebrate the things that bring us joy, and I want us to celebrate that we can pay our rent and our bills by fucking
Mm-hmm.
niggas. And I want us to celebrate that we can vocalize our pain. You know what I mean? Because some
Mm-hmm.
people don't know how to do that, and they don't want to, and they don't feel safe doing that. So like some of the things like Ramon said, or like Corwin said, or even Max or D'Angelo said, are like painful things that are like could be awkward to say, or you don't feel safe having that out in the public. And so I do very much want to celebrate like all we have to say and like what all our experiences are, like the painful, like the positive, the happy, the good, the liberating, all of them, you know?
Yeah. So I want some of the I'm still waiting to see if anyone's gonna hit us with some questions. But I think what's really good, or what I loved, are there was like different colors used and different elements of voice and different elements of music, and so things of that. So how did you get to this place of when you were putting this project together? Kind of the same thing I would probably ask Beyonce if I ever got to interview her. What was your inspiration? Like what inspired you to kind of put all of these things together in the way that you did to capture the story that you wanted to capture?
Yeah. Okay. So there's like there's a couple of things I can say to answer that. So first, as far as like inspiration, I'm very inspired by, and again, I said this to Glad too, but I'm inspired by urgency
Mm-hmm.
and by need and by want. And so like the things that are urgent to us, the things that we need and the things that we want, and the things that I want, need, and find urgent to me. So even to step from the film for a second, like when I take a picture, even if it's just like a selfie on my phone or something, it feels like I have to take this right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I need to see this and someone else needs to see this because this is a story, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is
Mm-hmm.
urgent, and that's also a want and also a need, you know? And so in doing this film, after finding out like, okay, this is going to be digital, so what does this look like? At the top of my mind, some of the things some of the stuff that I'm inspired by, and I kind of like instantly thought like, okay, this is what the digital series could look like, was Terrence Nance's Random Acts of Flyness, which is just
Mm-hmm.
like a wonderful, wonderful, abstract as fuck sometimes,
Yes.
you know, Black experience on HBO. And then Beyonce's Lemonade, and then Jay-Z's 444, I think are just three top tier like Black experiences. And they are all very curated and like community based.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many people a part of them. You know what I mean? Um, and that was like really inspiring as far as like formatting goes into how I formatted this film. So like I did reach out to B Major, who I see just joined. You're late. To create some beats for me. And Roman Caesar, who gave us some amazing vocals that'll be throughout all three episodes. And I wanted to find like local community members or in some like more well seen as far as like public figures. I wanted like people from the team and like people who like I know and love and people who I've never met to like be a part of this because I want the community to tell the story and I kind of like clip it together. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. And if that didn't answer the question, feel free to fill in it. You
No,
know,
it did.
pull it out of me.
No, it did. It did. So we have a question here, and someone asked, "What was it like to spend a day with a porn star?"
Yeah, it was like spending a day with like person.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
spending the day with the person. And just Max and D'Angelo were completely pleasant and calm and like chill and just I didn't feel like I felt like they were just like wonderful, lovely, you know, young men versus like, oh my God, like, are they going to want to have sex with me after this? Or like, oh my God, like, should I not stand too close? It didn't feel weird or strange. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that, I don't know. I think, too, another main thing about this film was trying to offer, to humanize porn stars and people and queer people in general. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
normalize. Because like he's a nigga trying to pay his bills just like I am, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's what it felt like. They're both like lovely men. And I was also at work. To be fair, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
also working, you know. So it feels like two niggas at work. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're speaking to something that I find to be very interesting, and I would love to get your thoughts on this idea that being queer is always linked to being hypersexual. And so, kind of like this idea that when you say I wanted to humanize them, you're taking away this stigma that. Oh, that is a really good question. I'll ask that question next. This idea that you are giving them basically you're giving them not only autonomy, but you're adding a voice, you're adding a life, you're adding an experience. So how does it feel to know that you were able to do that with this project? Like you're really starting kind of to create a trend, and you're moving kind of the pendulum forward. How does it feel to know that you're giving these individuals kind of a life and a voice to they're being you're being able to separate them from the work that they do? How does it feel to know that?
I think it's so fucking important, and it feels good that I was like able to do that with this, and I think with all of my work, like I seek to do that, and even like with like any poetry or like self-portraiture or pictures of like other people or whatever, I am trying to like offer like this person is a human and they are sad today, and like they're not on all the time, or I'm not on all the time, or like we have feelings, or we have bills, or we are just so much more than what we do to pay our bills, you know,
Right.
or what we do to survive. And it is very telling, like what we do and like how we do it. But it also isn't always that telling either. Like that is not like actually who we completely are. Like what we do for work is not always like who we are. And some people identify themselves with their work, and I do think that is valid, because like I'm like, you know, I'm a visual storyteller, and that, you know, I think, you know, but some people don't want to claim like their title as like this is who I am, you know, not always. And so it felt important to be able to like offer spaces where I'm like I also have a favorite color, you know, even though I do this, you know, I also like CNN, or you know, like whatever those things are, or I'm also a vegetarian, or you know, whatever the things are. And I think too it that was like an urgent thing for me growing up, because being like around my parents and them not like completely understanding me, or them or after like my dad's reaction when I told him I was gay finally, I was like, is this like all you're like thinking about is like the sex part of it, or because I also, you know, this and that, and I do know that there are like a lot of people who I've met and who I, you know, see in my community who don't feel like they're seen or offered any value because of like what they do, or or people think that they are just this thing. And even like thinking about Beyonce, and Beyonce is Beyonce, but Beyonce is like also like a person who doesn't want to be on the internet every single day, or she doesn't want to make an album every single month, you know. And I think that everyone should be valued for just more than they can like actually offer the world. Yeah.
So powerful. I think there have been some comments when folks have said we can be more than what we just produce. And there's so much beauty in the complexity of identity. So that kind of leads me to a question that was asked earlier. What are your feelings now that this project is out?
Yeah, I am relieved. I will say that I'm proud. You know, there are things like, of course, I'm like, oh my God, I could have changed this, or I could fix this, or let me re-edit it, or whatever. But I'm proud. I'm excited that it's out. I'm glad that the engagement has been positive as far as I've seen so far. And I'm relieved that I can take a day and a half off before I start getting back into the next one, which will be out on the 15th. Maybe at midnight that night and not in the morning, but I do feel relieved, and I do feel proud, and I do feel like I'm doing something that's like important to me and that is valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. And so another question we have from someone is, what are some stories you're going to tell in the next 2 episodes?
So the second episode is about mental health, and we are really talking to Black queer people and brown queer people about their mental health, and like what's on their mind, and like what are they feeling, and like what does that look like. Do you have a therapist? I talked to 4 different therapists, one of them being my own, in this film, just about like what it looks like to interact with like different you know, clients and people and queer people who do go to therapy, and like what are you doing to take care of yourself is like a lot of the questions I'm asking like the therapist and people who, you know, who might be patients or who might not. Like what does it look like to meditate, or to sit in the bathtub to make yourself feel calm when you're like anxious? Like what is just very much, I would say, like one of the themes of the second episode is going to be Like, how do you take care of yourself? And like, and just like, what does that look like and how does that feel? The third episode is about LGBTQ experience. Deshaun wants to call it culture or something, but we'll find a middle ground title. And that one. I think I want to be about celebrating as well, just like all three of them. Like, but also about kicking it. Like, what does it look like when we go out? Like, what does it look like when we gotta like get in a fight with somebody to protect ourselves? Like, what is it? What are the conversations we're having when we have to like tell our dad like, oh yeah, I'm gay? Like what are those experiences for us as queer people? And so that's what the third one is about. And I won't like give away too much because maybe I don't know yet either. But that's what I have in mind right now.
No, I think all of those are amazing. I think those are important. I know I had my meeting with my therapist yesterday, and she completely dragged me, but I needed it.
Right.
So sometimes we just need to be dragged. So a question here from somebody who's for one of the folks in the comments. They stated, "What advice would you share with the queer man that stays in very deep rural areas, i.e., like Mississippi, Alabama, etc., Arkansas? How do you fully embrace yourselves?" And it says, since they don't have greater advantages like big cities.
Yeah, that's a good question, and let me try not to struggle too much through it. For me, coming from Ohio, where just niggas just like, as far as I've seen, don't dress like me and don't look like me. I was even on a college campus where it's a little bit more okay. And even still, it's like, ooh, like should I, could I, would I? And for me, it was really I've wanted to live in New York for a long time, but I had to find like my escape. So I don't know if this is like amazing advice, and I don't think that you should move to New York or anything, especially right now. But like find wherever that escape place is, and find where makes you do feel safe. If that's like a mental place, or if it's like actually outside, and if you do have like the courage and the energy to step out and be like this more freer version of yourself, then like do it for the team and see what it gives. Keep your eyes open and watch out, but like offer yourself like a safe place. And if there are not a lot of like places that make you feel safe, you have to make one. I think that you have to really make one. Because even before I moved to New York, I still dressed maybe like lesser than I do now, but like I still was like walking around in like crop tops and like short shorts and my belly out and whatever, like growing my hair out and like wearing pink all the time and whatever. And like I really had to make like the places where I'm walking around like safe, even if it was like my living room where my dad is like, "Why are you dressed like a choreographer? What's the rest of your fucking shirt?" I'm like, okay, and it's really important and really hard to identify which places are safe and which places are not.
Right.
And I think just a big thing is really confidence and awareness of your surroundings. And trying things, just like try it. Like don't like go outside in the thong in the middle of Chicago or anything like that. But like give them some baby steps until you feel like safer and safer. Like to go through that process and see what it can actually look like.
Why you dress like a choreographer? I love that line. I think I see a lot of folks saying, the need for safe spaces to make your own safe space. And I would say yes. I mean, I even think a lot about, what happened at Pulse a couple of years ago. Like that was supposed to be a safe space,
Yeah,
and
totally.
it wasn't. So I think it's important for us to always think about this idea of like, how are we creating safe spaces for ourselves and what makes us feel safe? And I think your entire project speaks to that, right? Like what makes me feel whole. I guess since we have about 15 minutes left, I think one of the last things that I would love to touch on with you is what advice would you give to someone who, like yourself, is, you've put this project together, you've done the work for this project. A lot of us have stories, or a lot of us have things that we want to share, and we oftentimes are afraid to do so because of, again, the response our family's going to give us, or the response that we may get from our peers.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who is wanting to do something like you're doing? And ultimately, how can they get to a place where they feel comfortable and giving their art to the world?
Give me that one more time.
So ultimately, what advice would you be giving to someone who is wanting to do exactly what you're doing? They're wanting to give their art to the world, and they might be afraid to do so.
Yeah. I think that I think about fear a lot and what fear means. For
Mm-hmm.
me, fear is information. I think it is very a positive thing to be able to know what you're afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
I think it offers an opportunity. Um, Being afraid of something and knowing what you are afraid of gives you an opportunity to, of course, avoid it, but also
Mm-hmm.
it gives you an opportunity to grow and learn from that and push towards it, I would say. So like for me, it took, it took time, energy, and effort, but I had to like my relationship with fear now is like I kind of move toward it. Like things like I'm afraid of,
Mm-hmm.
like aside like taking the train because I can just not take the train, but
Coronavirus.
like the things that I'm afraid of, I've like built a relationship to, go towards, even if that is like love or, whatever those things are. I'm like, I want to be able to do these things. And the fact that I'm afraid of them means I care to some degree about this. And so I think that if you do care and you do want to, and you do want to tell these stories, I think that you should hold yourself accountable to doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
even like, making a safe space of where you live, if it's a rural place, do it in doses, give it a baby step, you know what I mean, like tell these stories, or make like a short film and maybe keep it to yourself or just send it to your friends or make it a private link on YouTube before you like it's open to the world, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I would
Yeah.
say baby step it and really like hold yourself accountable to giving yourself the life that you want and the work that you want and the being able to create and tell the stories that you want to be able to tell. And
Mm-hmm.
you can start with like friends or like a close circle, or you can start with telling your story to your therapist and getting to a place where you're confident enough to share it with the world, if the world even deserves it, because it might not.
That's a really good point. The world sometimes doesn't deserve your voice. So we have another point or another question here. Someone's asking about different moments from this first episode that you've released. What ultimately would you like to speak to in terms of the audience? What are you hoping that they tune in to get out of this first episode?
Yeah. Okay. And I see Kenny asked the question too, and so I'm kind of gonna fuse these two. um
Okay.
I wanted the community to be like in the room, and I want to offer visibility to the community. And so,
Mm-hmm.
again, when we were told that this was going to be digital, there was like a lot of pushback from the team, myself included, because it's like we need like these spaces where we can all see each other, and that's so important. And so for me, like my goal with these films is to be able to offer ourselves to be able to see each other, like when we're in corona times and we can't physically see each other, so like
Mm-hmm.
what does it look like to be able to see each other like on a screen and not just see two of us, but see 20 of us at least, and
Mm-hmm.
20 of us
Mm-hmm.
isn't the whole community, but like as much as we can, and as much visibility as I can offer, like my community and people who I love and care about.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, we're like I said, we're getting to the tail end of it. I guess I just wanted to ask you freely, and I hope Kenny doesn't kill me for asking you this. What are you listening to? Because I know music is a big part of this project as a whole, music and visuals and things. So, what
Yeah,
music are you listening to?
yeah. So I've been actually listening to and I'm kind of late on this, but I've been thinking about. I think his name is James, um, the guy who made the Patty's Pies video.
Okay, okay, yeah, I know who you're
So
talking
so
about.
his voice was like stuck in my head. So I've been like listening to a lot of Patti LaBelle, him. Um, I've been listening to Babyface and Brian McKnight because they're doing all these live battles.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I've been listening to Beyonce and Nicki. I've been listening to Beyonce's new remix. And Ariana Grande's been on repeat. Um,
Hmm.
so that's mainly that, like those people and those songs are what I'm listening to right now, just because they make me very happy. They
Yeah.
make me happy, and they also make me feel seen in a lot of ways for some reason.
Hmm. Hmm.
Even some of these experiences they've had that I haven't had, but like a lot of the ones they have had that I've had too, I can just very much empathize. I'm like, yes, like you get it.
Yeah.
Like let me take a break and make my cocktail and listen to this in between edits because I look like I deserve to listen to this.
Yeah. And so I think this is also a really good question to ask, and I feel like maybe all of us could probably say we could take something from this question. How are you as a creative taking care of yourself in this time with like Corona, with knowing you still have stuff to do, but also feeling like the pressures of having to stay still? How are you taking care of yourself as a creative?
Yeah, as a creative, I'm taking care of myself by creating and holding myself accountable to creating on different levels. As far as like the films go, as far as like I draw sometimes or illustrate in my free time, or I was doing like a writers group every couple of days for the month of April because it was poetry month. And I've been like sharing like that. But like as a person, I've been like taking care of myself, not the best as I normally do, but like I'll meditate and take like a really long bath, or I talk to my therapist every Wednesday. I talk to my best friends every day, just like to check in and just let them know like what's worrying me, or what's making me not feel good, or like I've been like cooking for myself a lot, for like since we've been inside. In the days that I don't feel like cooking, like I order food, or like the days like I haven't met like whatever deliverables that I'm like supposed to meet, I'm like forgiving myself, because that's important, because I have lived a life where I beat myself up every time I like quote unquote failed myself or disappointed someone, and I'm not like extremely interested in that anymore. So for me, taking care of myself is like really like forgiving myself for any like downfalls or anything that might seem negative, because I really don't have time, and nobody else has time, and nothing is really that deep, you know? Like it's really not the end of the world if I don't send this email by 12 p.m. or
Right.
you know, it'll be okay, and like hopefully someone's gonna be around to still love me afterwards, and I trust enough people, and I trust myself enough to know that they will be if I don't answer the call, or if I don't text back right away, or if I snapped at them or something because I had an attitude, or if I overslept for something. And it just really is just a lot of like self-forgiveness, and kind of affirming myself that I'm like I'm good, you know? That is like one of the most healthy things. And for me, it's sometimes just more healthy than a lot of like the typical like healthy things, because I don't like eat on time every single day, and I need to work on that, and I will. And I'm aware of that. But I like also forgiving myself because like I missed a meal or something is also, it's just important to me right now. So yeah.
Yeah. As I sit here, I was looking at the time and doing everything I did today, and I forgot to eat lunch. But I'm like, dinner's coming up soon, so whatever.
You
But
know,
I
just
feel that,
double it. I don't know.
yeah, you just eat a little bit more at dinner and to balance everything. So, so we're getting to the end of our time. I know my biggest thing is I know Instagram will boot us off if we're not done within the hour. So I want to make sure that I'm mindful of that. Are there any last thoughts that you want to give, the folks who are here and that are literally looking to you as an inspiration? Like what are your last thoughts? What would you like to tell them? What would you love them to know and see with the projects that you're doing?
That was a mouthful. You be giving me bullet points in these questions, girl.
I'm sorry.
um Yeah, I don't know. I really want to offer my community. If you haven't seen the film yet, I would love for you to go see it. And the second two films are in the works. So like, if you have a story that you want to be told, or you want to add to the conversation, please reach out to me. I'm very open. You know, I will reply. I'm interested in your story, and like I do care. So that would be one thing. And then the other thing is like, if you want something in your life, and if you want your life to look a certain way, I really like challenge you to give yourself that and offer yourself that, and find a way to go get it, and find a way to give it to yourself, and find the resources, and find support and community. You know what I mean? Yeah, so that is what I would say. And then I saw there's like a couple little things in here, in like the little question box. Do you see it?
Oh, I don't get to see the question boxes. I think
Oh,
you
I
do
see
because
that. No
you're
wonder.
the
Okay.
host. Yeah.
So, like, if I can power through this in 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Someone says, Picasso. Hi, Picasso. Picasso's in episode 2 or 3, you guys. Do you ever feel guilt surrounding ambition or putting yourself first? How do you push past that and gather the courage to say no? I have an idea of like what my life needs to look like, and I've been like the yes man in my past, and I just decided I was not me, and that's not what I was interested in. It's not healthy for me, rather than it's not me. It's not healthy all the time. So like putting my ambitions first and putting myself first and posting a picture of myself first before I edit someone else's who didn't pay me is important to me.
It's real.
What's been the most difficult part of shooting this project? The most difficult part of shooting the project was like, one, the editing was very difficult because of the timeline and just because I wanted to tell a good, concise enough story that offered justice to all the people involved. But one of the most difficult parts was carrying 12 bags of equipment down the steps by myself every other day, multiple times a day. Do you use any historic figures like Nina Simone as inspiration to tell your stories? So as far as inspiration to tell my stories, I don't usually specifically pinpoint someone. A lot of the things are kind of just like coming to me and are more natural than they are research, and that is something like I want to work on. But I really am valuing and kind of more so putting first like the people who I know and like the people who I like have experienced in real life and who like I want to experience in real life versus I don't know, versus like stories of the past per se. And that has its place and that has value. But for me right now, it's more urgent. It's really important to tell stories and talk to people who I know right now, you know? And describe your creative process in producing the film. Creative process would be waking up, sitting at my computer for 18 hours, talking to my friends throughout, and then trying to go to bed and repeat, honestly. But in scrolling through Twitter and like scrolling through Instagram and like having conversations with my friends and watching like little fires everywhere, I'm like, oh, this makes me think of this, or oh, he has something to say. Let me send them a DM like and see if they're interested, like that kind of thing. I wouldn't say like I have like a very specific process. It's really just do the shit and like however it gets done, it gets done, you know?
Right.
And then last one I think is what message did you want to initially get across in the first episode? Initially, I really wanted like the idea of like sexual liberation to come out, and I'm really glad that it came out in the way that it came out. Because I just really wanted to humanize and like offer people a space where it's like, yes, I do sex work, or yes, I feel sexy when I wear this, or blah blah blah. And I wanted that to be like an okay thing that people felt comfortable saying in the space with me. And that's all. I think that's all the ones that are in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you covered it all.
Yeah.
I loved this conversation
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you for everything. Wanting again to thank MOBItalks for everything. Glad everybody who helped put your project together or helped you make that project go. Like
Yeah.
again, it's amazing. Is there a place where folks can find you?
Yeah, people can find me on the at LaQuann Dawson on Instagram. It's 2 N's, and when you send me a message, you know the Q in my name is capital, just for anyone who didn't know. But yeah, at LaQuann Dawson on Twitter and on Facebook. And my website is laquandawson.com. You can find me at Moby. You can find my tag and any Moby stuff. And you can find the film at moby-nyc.com/talk, and it's in the comments as well.